Hey friends, okay, this is take two. We started a video that apparently no one could hear. So we're back. We're going to start
People
over.
are so picky these days.
I know, it's like this lip read, You're live. Okay, so leave us a comment and let us know if you can hear us. Hopefully that you can, but let us know how that is going. And we will start over from the top. I'm Kristen Howerton. I blog at Rage Against the Minivan.
I'm Paul Martin. I blog at Paula Sophia.
Paul and I are old friends, and we are both political junkies, and we come from different political backgrounds. I am a socialist Democrat.
I am a moderate Republican.
Although we are a little bit united right now. We can hear you. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
The
Thanks
tens.
for letting us know.
The tens.
Yeah, tens of people are hearing us now. Although we are a little bit united in our disdain for Trump. And so things have been a little topsy-turvy this election season.
Yeah.
We haven't been debating our candidates quite as much as...
I still want to debate you.
I know.
And we're like, yeah, I love
really
you.
a
I love you
bummer.
too. We're
I
together.
know, totally.
Oh, well.
I know. So we wanted to talk a little bit today. I mean, last week we talked and we left off at the end of the Democratic National Convention, which seemed to be a great boost for the Democratic Party.
Yeah.
The polls were definitely showing that.
Yeah. Yeah, so Hillary's somewhere between 7 and 15 points ahead in the national polls, and it's difficult to know if that was the traditional bounce,
right,
or whether it's because Donald Trump decided to go put his foot in his mouth about 37 times after
he sure did.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about that.
All
so, I mean, in the wake of the Democratic National Convention, I think it was the second to the last night, the DNC had a Muslim family come on, two parents whose son had been killed as a soldier in Afghanistan fighting for our country. And it was a very kind of impassioned, it was an emotional plea.
Yeah. Not
actually entirely different from what happened at the Republican National Convention, where they had the family of a son who was killed in Benghazi. So, in both cases, it's kind of like this heart-wrenching, very sad story.
Yeah.
But the father did challenge Trump and just kind of said, like, what kind of sacrifice have you made?
Yeah. And
then Trump doubled down.
Yeah, and you just got the sense, I actually saw that speech live, and you just got the sense when Mr. Khan, the father, spoke of his son and of the Constitution, you just got the sense that this was a man that you wish you knew. You got the sense that, I wish he was my next door neighbor.
Yeah.
I wish, there was just that character,
intelligence,
conviction,
absolutely.
a certain calm.
Yep.
And he did attack Trump, but he also told his story of how I am a Muslim, I am a Muslim, and also I love this country, and my son sacrificed his life, is a hero, and he actually was a hero because he went out and didn't have to go do what he did. And it just sat, and then a day or two later, Trump was asked about the cons, and
well, I mean, he said all sorts of hideous things in the aftermath. He said, "I've made plenty of sacrifices." He basically dismissed their sacrifice and talked about the fact that he has built businesses as if that's the same. And then at another point, he insulted the wife and basically implied that she was silent because she's a woman and Muslim.
Yeah.
Which was not even the case.
Yeah, and typically in these elections, these candidates are fighting over policy issues. They're fighting over really deeply philosophical and practical issues about how we run our country.
Right.
But with Donald Trump, the big pink elephant in the room is, why couldn't you just say something like, I commend this family for the sacrifice that they made? I totally disagree with that.
Right.
But he can't seem to bring himself to empathy.
No, and it's a complete binary for him. It's you're for me or you're against me. I can't acknowledge the sacrifice your son paid because you insulted me. I mean, this guy, there's no nuance with this guy.
There isn't. And there seem to be about 13 to 15 million Americans that don't have a problem with the fact that this woman who is grieving the loss of her son, which we all know is the worst kind of loss a human being could have, that she doesn't speak because apparently since he died, she can't speak when she sees an image of him in a room.
Right.
And his inability to simply have any sense of empathy with her.
Right.
And instead he attacks, once again, 1.5 billion people and says basically she can't speak because she's a Muslim woman, which is preposterous and, like you said,
and presumptive and stereotyped and ridiculous.
And she comes out the next day or something.
Yeah, she wrote a really impassioned article and just basically said exactly what you said, like, my grief is too great, and I was standing in solidarity with my husband who, represented my own thoughts, but it's certainly not because I'm Muslim or not allowed to speak. But I mean, as a mother, I wouldn't be able to stand up in that crowd and say that. I would be the same way. I would be way too emotional.
And whether one's a Republican or Democrat, George W. Bush, there was a woman that was boycotting or picketing or something outside of his ranch in Midland, Texas. She had lost a son in Iraq. She was protesting the war. And Bush basically said, my heart goes out to you and for the loss of your son.
Yeah.
And I am so sorry as the president.
Yeah.
However, I disagree fundamentally with your premise on the war.
Yeah.
But why can't Trump, to this minute, offer to that family
a hand of condolence?
A hand of condolence.
And that's what we
want. And that's what we want leaders to do.
Yeah.
That's what leaders do.
Yes.
But
and
to this minute,
gaps.
They bridge gaps.
Well, or he could have chosen silence. I mean, I don't believe that Hilary responded at all to the mother of the son who was killed in Benghazi. I think she just, and he could have done that also. But instead, he becomes combative with this family and really sparked a debate with them over the course of 2 weeks. I mean, it's media headlines, Trump against this poor family.
Yeah, yeah. And it begs the question, if one wants to become president, then do what's required. This is politics. Do what is required to become president.
Yeah.
And this sets off 7 days of countless, not just gaffes, but there's a crying baby in the room.
Right.
And he says, I love babies. And then a few minutes later says, get the baby out of this room.
Well, I want to talk about that for a minute, too, because so many people have said Trump hates babies, but what I want to point out is really, this was an insult to the mother of the baby. It wasn't about a baby. It was about him thinking a woman shouldn't be in a place with her baby. But if you notice his behavior, he initially said, no, it's fine, I love babies. And then later he said, okay, now you can get the baby out. And then he insulted her. He goes, she couldn't understand my sarcasm. But he wasn't being sarcastic before, and that's gaslighting. When you make someone feel like what you said was not what you really said, that's gaslighting. I mean, it's a narcissistic manipulation technique, which we've seen him use so many of. But, for him to go, why didn't you take the baby out? But he said, leave the baby there. Like, it was just crazy making.
Yeah.
The guy's insane.
It doesn't make sense. And I think as a Republican, and again, later he doesn't endorse Paul Ryan, and he doesn't endorse John McCain. I mean, the level of these aren't even gaffes. These are
the level of no fucks is high. I mean,
so his campaign is essentially in tailspin when the plane is spinning and going down, and nobody really knows what's going on.
Well, I mean, I do feel like the situation with the Khan family, I feel like that you were seeing people vocally distancing themselves from Trump. You were seeing Republican leaders like, whoa, right? I mean, we're seeing dissension. I mean, more than we've already seen.
Yeah, and the big theory is, it's one thing to get 13 million votes in a Republican primary, which Trump got, but it's quite another to need to get 65 million votes in a general election. And so it's almost like he's thinking that he could continue to run that same campaign that he ran against 16 Republicans in a general election, and he simply can't.
Yeah.
And so he comes out and he says, as he goes, so here's Trump for the last year. I'm ahead in the polls. I'm winning. They're losing. Look at the polls. Look at the polls. Look at the polls.
Yeah.
Every single time he speaks, he refers to the polls. And suddenly this week he's down between 7 and 15 points in all the national polls. And what does he say? They're rigged.
Yeah.
So we need to talk about that.
Yeah. Well, we'll talk about it.
I think it's dangerous. I mean, I think that there are millions of Americans that aren't well read enough to understand that this process is the best process that the world's ever seen in terms of a true democracy,
right?
With voting booths and people that need identifications,
right?
And now you have the person who is leading an entire party saying, "I'm losing, therefore it's rigged." And what does that do to maybe 5, 6, 7, 8 million people who think that this is their savior? What do these people do? Because they believe anything he says.
Right. Well,
Al Gore lost in 2000 after were you in Florida then?
Yes, I was.
I mean, you know how this is one of the most amazing. Al Gore won the popular vote in the United States of America. This thing gets kicked up to the Supreme Court, and right wingers essentially on the Supreme Court make George W. Bush the president, and Al Gore stands up and says, "It's time for peace."
Exactly. That's diplomacy. And I'm also going to mention the fact that I voted for George W. Bush in that election.
No, that's not possible.
I did.
No.
It's true. It's true. You know what? I was young. I was really young. And anyway, there's no excuse. But absolutely. I mean, I think you saw that. And there's been other situations like that. I mean, if you want to lead our country, you also have to not be willing to burn the whole thing down, Yeah. And that's what Al Gore did. He said, "I'm not going to burn the whole thing down." And again, Donald Trump does not care. I mean, he has incited violence at his rallies. He has incited racism outside. He has stoked the flames of so much inhumanity. I don't really think he cares. And I think he would go down in flames saying there's a rigged election and calling for people to riot. I don't think he cares. It's political theater for him. I think he gets off on the drama.
I have noticed, yes, and I have noticed at least on Facebook, a strange, mysterious silence amongst many of the Trump supporters.
I have too. Not that I have many friends
right,
left.
I'm sure you don't, but
yeah, I have too.
There was another thing that was kind of a sideline, given I won't support Paul Ryan, I won't support John McCain, get this baby out of here.
Yeah.
But he said something that so troubled me because I had someone fairly close to me that experienced sexual harassment in the workplace, a woman.
Yes.
And
this was bad.
Yeah, and as a therapist, one of the most insidious things on the planet is power abuse.
Yes.
Whether it be a priest or a boss or a doctor. And sexual harassment in the workplace is a truly insidious form of abuse where a boss essentially, and many times it could be a single mother, somebody who is so dependent on their $20 an hour or $15 an hour to raise their kids, a boss can take advantage. And Eric Trump, one of the Trump sons, said in an interview, and you can Google this, Ivanka, Donald's daughter, his sister, would never be abused. She would never be sexually abused or sexually harassed in the workplace. She's too strong for that.
Oh, okay.
And I'm just telling you that, what does that say to the millions of women who
have
been
victims?
victims?
Donald Trump actually say if a woman's getting harassed, she should just find a new job?
Right. It's that, and this is very nuanced. This is why I think a lot of Trump supporters don't see this as blatant. But this is the most implicit form. I don't know who David Duke is. Well, you've just endorsed David Duke.
Yeah.
Sorry. It's this very kind of nuanced way of not coming out and saying all victims are losers. But essentially he said to the millions of women who have been abused by males with power, you're all losers.
Yeah.
Because my sister would never be
They're
like
strong.
you. Yeah, she's strong.
If you're strong, just leave the job and go find another job.
And she's the daughter of a billionaire. And I will say in her speech, which many people lauded, I will say I was appalled when she talked about, I'm a working mother. I wanted to barf.
Yeah.
Because she ain't no working mother.
No.
She's a multi-billionaire,
very
privileged woman that probably has 2,000 square feet built out on the side of her office with 7 nannies teaching them Latin in classical music. And I just, there's something about the lack of humility there.
I know. There is. I mean, Okay, so let's move from Trump for a minute and talk about Hillary's gaffe around the FBI You saw it. I didn't see it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't get this woman. And so she was in an interview with Chris Wallace, and she used the words, that Comey,
the FBI
director
who was interviewing her in regards to the emails.
And he did the whole investigation, and she said, well, James Comey found me truthful and consistent. And she used those words.
In an interview.
Yeah.
And he, in fact, did not say that.
He didn't say anything like it.
So she got busted for it.
Yeah.
And what was the word she used? Rather than saying I made a mistake, she used the word...
I short-circuited.
Which is my new favorite phrase. I'm going to use it all the time.
Every
time
I
behave badly,
I short-circuited.
If I lie, I
short-circuited.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm short-circuted. So from now on, people, anytime you lie, cheat, steal, the stuff we all do from time to time, you short-circuited. And so it would have been a huge issue had Trump not been rejecting babies and and deeming the most powerful Republican in the country to be this kind of sideline. But I don't
We're good.
Why can't Hillary just say something like, yeah, I really blew it?
Yeah.
And she lied. She totally lied. She's a very smart woman. They don't get any smarter than her. She said that the FBI director deemed her truthful, quote, that's the word she used, and consistent. And she got called out on it.
Yeah.
But it's almost, this is the weirdest election.
So weird.
That would be huge if it wasn't for Donald Trump.
Donald Trump is so bad that it's that's kind of not a big deal. At least she's not throwing lobs at a Gold Star family that lost their son in war.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's so bad. All right, let's talk. We wanted to talk a little bit about which candidate is the pro-life candidate. And Rachel Held Evans wrote a really great article about this last week. And she was talking about the fact that, pro-life tends to be thought of as who is going to make abortion illegal, basically. But I think that there's a couple issues there. First of all, there's a larger ethic around being pro-life. So pro-life should not, just be about reducing abortions, but it should also be about making sure that, children are not in foster care, and making sure that there's quality of life for people, and there's health care, and that mothers can raise their children and all that kind of stuff. So she made the argument that Hillary Clinton is more pro-life, in fact, because Hillary, wants to do more for reproductive education, which at the end of the day, this is what reduces abortions. Women knowing how to use birth control reduces abortion. I don't know why that's such a difficult concept for people, but right? I mean, that's cause and effect. She certainly wants to do more in that vein. She certainly seems to want to do more for, young mothers, family preservation, all this kind of stuff. So Rachel kind of made the case that, the net result is that Hillary seems to be more pro-life.
Yeah, and it's so complicated, this abortion issue. I am pro-life, but what that means to me is simply that I don't like to kill things. Anything.
Right.
I think we should not kill things.
Yeah.
It's a very Roman Catholic position. I only believe in war in just war cases. I think it was a good idea for the Allied powers to stop Hitler from murdering countless people. I mean, there were situations where the end justifies the means. But in my pro-life position, what I mean by that is, what I mean by my pro-life position isn't that I think overturning Roe versus Wade is a good idea.
Right.
I don't think that overturning Roe versus Wade would reduce one abortion in the country.
Right. No.
And I agree from what I've heard. I didn't read Rachel's article, but I lived in Europe for a couple of years, and amongst European evangelicals, there's a much more holistic view of life.
Right.
If people are poor, life expectancy goes way down,
right.
Therefore they're dying.
Right.
And in the U.S., there just seems to be this kind of black and white issue regarding abortion. But what I don't get with Democrats, respectfully, is why Hillary Clinton, as a Methodist, a tried, true Christian who grew up in the church, wouldn't say something alongside of her stance of, I think we want to reduce the amount of abortions in this country. And like, why couldn't there?
I think she has.
Has she?
I think she has. I think she has said she wants to reduce abortions.
Okay.
I mean, I could be wrong on that, but I really feel like I've heard her say that, and I feel like that's what most pro-choice women want. They want to. I mean, nobody wants, because I mean, at the end of the day, even if you had no moral implications around abortion, it's an unnecessary medical procedure.
Yeah.
You don't want to push anyone into it. It would absolutely be better for any woman to be preemptive in her reproductive concerns than reactive.
Yeah.
You know?
And I have to say something that just does not sound very Republican, but my wife actually was pointing out that in most cases you have these white men making these comments. Like in the case of right now, we have Donald Trump talking about how he's, anti-abortion. And there is a part of me, and maybe it's because I have 3 sisters, or I'm very close to my mother and my 3 sisters, where it just seems strange for men to be so... I mean...
Yeah.
Women get pregnant, they have choices with respect what to do, and then you have these male legislators, 95% of them in Congress are men. It just seems to be a pink elephant. Like, men, maybe you should back off a little bit as to what women, and I don't like to say that, but it just seems like a gaping contradiction.
I agree.
I don't know.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, but the bottom line is, factually, abortion has declined with Democrats in office over the last, several years.
Yeah.
And abortion, again, it declines when women have better access to birth control, better access to education. But it also declines when women have, when those things have failed and women have the social services in place to raise a child when they're not in poverty. So on both ends, these are more democratic policies that I think allow women to either prevent a pregnancy or carry a pregnancy to term if it's an unplanned pregnancy to term.
Yeah. And I think with abortion, my position is good people disagree, and both of you and I are Christians, and really smart, good Christians disagree on this issue.
Yeah.
And that's where I take issue again with many of the people on the right that don't seem to have the, whatever you want to call it, poise or humility to understand that very good and very smart people disagree on the subject. It's not as simple as people that are pro-choice are bad, evil murderers. And again, my wife was saying today, even the thought of calling someone a murderer, it's just, I cringe as a Republican when I hear that kind of language, and I immediately think of women who made the difficult choice to have an abortion, probably when they were 18 or 19 or 20, and for bonehead Republicans to deem them murderers makes me sick.
It's disgusting, and that describes many of my friends and many of my friends who are Christian leaders.
Right.
I mean, and to use that kind of language to describe a woman who made a horribly difficult decision. And I think, it sounds like we're on the same page. I mean, I for myself personally, I am pro-life, meaning for my interpretation of how I should conduct myself, an abortion would be off the table.
Yeah.
Okay, but that's me personally. I don't feel that I need to legislate my moral code on everyone else.
Right.
And so I even am reticent to even talk about my own personal moral code, because again, I'm not about putting my moral code on anyone else. My own personal self, me and God, praying about, what to do. It's my own deal.
And you won't find a more thoughtful person on this. I mean, Tim Kaine, the vice presidential running man for Hilary, is pro-life, but you echoed his view,
right?
Which is, I don't want to kill things, but I don't think these courts and these cops should be, throwing people in jail for their own choices. I think another issue too, and this is a much more, the question of when human life begins is much more complicated than I believe the Catholic position, which is birth control is bad. I mean, a sperm is right.
Yeah.
That goes too far in my view. Although I'm usually very pro-Catholic in terms of their ethics, but if an ant's life begins somewhere in the in an egg, therefore we shouldn't ever kill ants because it's a life. Well, that seems weird. We kill ants and bacteria and all kinds of things. So is a human being at 4 weeks? Yeah. Well, it certainly seems to be a kind of life, but is that a human life? And humanity seems to involve more than just simple biological realities. In the blastula or zygote section, I just have trouble deeming that to be a human life. Right. Because that life is no different than a dog's life, or an ant's life, or a bee's life. Yeah. And I just ultimately don't want to judge people that disagree with me.
Well, no, and I think for different women and for different moral codes, that line is going to be different. You know, and for some people, they're certainly not thinking that this is the moment that life begins, that the zygote is, But, there's a lot of differing views on that. But I do feel like the common ground for everyone should be we all want to reduce abortion. Nobody wants more women to have abortions. And I have friends who are staunchly pro-choice, who've had abortions, for whom that was a painful experience, I don't think anyone wants to wish that on anyone else. Yeah. I think what women all want to wish empowered decisions and empowered sexuality for every woman,
And as a Republican, and as a Christian Republican, I said this already, but it makes me very sad to see many people on my side, so to speak, shame women, guilt women, use the murder word. It's it's repulsive.
It is.
And it makes me very sad.
Me too. All right, well, I guess that's on that note.
Right, on that high note.
On that high note. That's it for this week. Hit us up with your comments, and I will put a link to that article from Rachel Held Evans as well, because I think it's a really good one.
Good.
Thanks for joining us. We'll be back next week.
Bye.